Hi, you're listening to It Happened to Me, a rare disease and medical challenges podcast. The mission of our podcast is to support you, our listeners, and to create community as you confront the toughest challenges in life. All of us will experience health hardships. The real question is how we adapt. That's the focus of It Happened to Me, which wants to help you overcome limitations and live a full and satisfying life. Drawing on their own health challenges, co-hosts Kathy Gildenhorn and Beth Glassman interview guests who share stories and research to help you succeed in the face of difficult health obstacles. It happened to me. I'm not alone, and neither are you.
Wes has been involved in rare and orphan diseases since 1998, interviewing and surveying patients, family caregivers, physicians, nurses, and patient advocacy group leaders. Wes has more than 40 years experience in market research and over 20 years in healthcare market research.
Thank you for joining us today on our rare disease celebration episode, Wes.
Hey, good. It's great to be here.
Oh, we're thrilled you're here, Wes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can you share with us the story behind the creation of Rare Patient Voices and what inspired you to establish this organization?
Yeah, it's funny. I come from not from the rare disease world. I came from the consumer market research world. I did market research on Wheaties and on McCormick spices and things like that. But then in the 90s, I moved into the healthcare field, and that's just when they stopped. Well, they've always been interested in health companies, pharmaceutical companies, life science. They've always been interested in what doctors think, right? They prescribe, they're important, but they just started to get interested in the patients. They were starting to advertise to them on TV, and so I got involved in that. I found people like to talk about their breakfast cereals and their spices, but nothing near like their kid has a disease or they're suffering, right? It's life and death. It's their family. It was so exciting to have people talk about that. And then I found, one, they like to do that, but two, it was difficult to find patients. How do you find people you can find people that eat Wheaties, but how do you find people with certain rare diseases? And a client came to us that was in the hemophilia space, and they said, could you and your company find us hemophilia patients, create what we call in research a panel, a community of folks, and we could do a lot of surveys and interviews. We really want to learn what they think, what they like, how we can serve them better. And we said, sure. We went to the National Hemophilia Foundation and we recruited folks. It wasn't even internet, it was paper and pencil, but people were very eager. They said, what's this about? I'm happy to share my opinions. And it worked well. And every year we'd go back to that conference. Well, here's where the motivation for Rare Patient Voice came. A couple of years later, a different client at that conference came up to me and said, hey, I hear you have this wonderful community of hemophilia patients. Can we access it? Can we ask them questions? I'm like, well, no. It was paid for by client A. You can't make it available to client B. But I thought to myself, why not create a group that's not beholden to any one company that could answer questions from a lot of different companies? Well, that gave me the idea. That was 20-some years ago. I didn't do anything about it, though, until 11 years ago. I kept saying that I had that idea, but it came together for me 11 years ago, personally and professionally. I was working for a research company that ran short on funds and asked me if I would work for a few months without being paid. And my wife had been out of the workforce raising our kids, and she was looking for a job. Well, a job fell into her lap that had healthcare, right? It was all about having the healthcare. And I said, okay, wait a minute, you do that. And if I'm not going to be paid, I know something I'd rather do. I'd rather start this company. And guess what? The first thing I did was go to the hemophilia conference. I had done it. I knew it worked. I've been involved in that category, and I didn't even know whether that's all we would ever do. But now we're up to 1,500 different diseases, and et cetera, et cetera. So
how interesting!
That was the impetus. Somehow it just clicked.
But it really took on the marketing mold that got you into this space with rare patients and caregivers.
Yeah, exactly. And I've met so many, and it's like so many have such, compelling stories. It's like, every disease is worse than the one before.
Well, congratulations. That's quite impressive.
It's really revolutionary what you did. It's you were really on the cutting edge there.
Yeah, the timing was great because companies were getting more and more interested in the patients, and they needed help finding them. And so it was worked out well for everybody.
Yeah, you were
Well,
a great bridge.
Yes, that leads me to my next question. How can you explain how the rare patient voice connects patients and caregivers with opportunities to voice their own opinions on medications and other products and
Yeah,
services?
so the way it works is, if you're a pharmaceutical company, a biotech, or a device company, or even an academic, a researcher, and are you interested in a patient opinions, they'll typically go to a market research firm. A lot of the big company, or big and small companies, have good large and small firms they know and they love that analyze, give them good insights. And those firms will say, great, and they'll write up surveys and they'll get up interview, they'll have everything ready to go, and they'll say, but to find a patient, we go to a rare patient voice. So they'll come to us, and so they'll say, we're looking for 100 people with hemophilia or 20 people with lupus or whatever it might be. We go to the folks who've signed up with us and send them an email. It's as simple as that. We send an email, and we try to tell people as simple as possible what it is. Hey, this is a 30-minute online survey for folks with myasthenia gravis, and it pays $60. We pay people at the rate of $120 per hour of their time. But we'll say it right in the headline and the bullets, because people don't want to waste their time. If you're like me, you get all these stray emails. So we don't want it to get lost in the email, waterfall. Yeah. And so we simply do that. We don't want to spam people. We don't want to ask people if they don't have a certain disease. We want to target it to them, and then we let them know what it is, and it's up to them to decide. They can say, oh, that sounds interesting, I'd like to do it, or I'd rather not do it. And then we don't bother them anymore. But so it's as simple as that. Once people have signed up with us, we send an email, and then they can make the judgment whether they want to participate or not.
Whether they want to proceed.
Yeah.
Well, how does rare patient voice ensure that the voices of patients and caregivers are heard and valued in the medical research and development process?
Yeah, that's very good, because people can give their opinion, but they don't want to just be giving it and have it ignored.
Exactly.
One of the things I think is most important, this sounds kind of counterintuitive, but the fact that we pay patients, as I said, $120 an hour, it makes it more value. If you get, we had opera tickets years ago, and one time we couldn't go, and we gave it to my brother-in-law. Well, it was free to him. So at the last minute, they didn't feel like going. Well, if they knew what it cost, they would have gone. So think of a pharma company. We pay these people. Let's listen to what they have to say. If you pay for something, you attach value to it. So I think it's important, because sometimes people say, well, donate my money. And that's very generous of folks. But I say, but it's important that the money go to you, because then your voice is valued. Because think about it, if you're in a big, pharmaceutical, whatever kind of company, money is an important thing. They value what they pay for. So I think that is so important. The other is simply, my goodness, once you hear people talk. So many of these are what we call qualitative interviews, like a Zoom interview or an in-person interview. If you hear people's stories, you can't help but be moved by it. And it's so great to hear somebody that's working on a drug, or the access to a drug, or how it might help people. It's just not numbers on a chart, right? It's real people. And we find that it's really powerful to get that voice in front of people. They can't help but be moved.
Yes. Well, what types of surveys and interviews do patients and caregivers participate in through Rare Patient Voice, and how do their insights contribute to improving healthcare?
Yeah, it's amazing. There's so many different types of surveys and interviews. I mean, there are, and then especially before COVID, there's a lot of in-person, and there's still some in-person, which is really hard with rare diseases, because how many people live in the same area that they could go to the same location? But so much of it is about new products, new treatments, medications that are coming out. That's because you think about it, why would people want to pay to do this research? Well, they have a new treatment, and they need to find out what patients are going to think about it. Do they understand it? What will they ask their doctor about? What do they like? What don't they like? And patients love that, because I say it's like getting a sneak preview of drugs coming down the pike, because they won't have the name, it'll always be blinded, but they'll see it and have an idea of some of the new treatments that are coming, and they'll do that with what I say, qualitative, like a phone, like an hour-long phone conversation. Used to be on the phone, now it's usually a Zoom type call where the people can see each other, or an in-person, or an online survey where people, typically those go shorter than that because it gets really boring. That went in an hour, clicking off boxes and things. But it's typically shorter. So online service, but there's online, what they call online bulletin boards, where people can post whenever it's convenient to them, but they can see what the other people post and they can respond and talk. It's like a session like that. There's some even where they'll go to people's homes. Now, obviously, people want to give their permission for that. My wife always says, well, I'd have to clean the house. But so many people are happy. So because they want to see what people, it's one thing what people could say, but if you see how people live, right, you really could get some insights into how you help them. You might say, hey, it's not just about them and their kid. Their other children are there and they don't have the disease, but they need help taking care of that. Whatever it might be, you see people's lifestyle in person. So there's all sorts of different research. It's amazing what people come up with to interview people about.
Absolutely. Well, what are some of the common challenges or barriers that patients and caregivers face when they're trying to participate in medical research? And how does Rare Patient Voice address these challenges?
Probably the biggest challenge is geography. It's like if travel, if they say, it could, again, as I said before COVID, so many things were in person, go to a focus group, I'll go to interview, which is great to do that. But think about it. I remember somebody who scheduled an arthritis groups on the 3rd floor of a building that didn't have an elevator. Well, that's a big
Yeah.
Or think of eyesight, right? If there's they put it online and it's tiny print. Well, no, you've got to make it accessible. So accessibility is a key thing. And here's where COVID actually had a silver lining. It forced so many companies to say, wait a minute, how can we do it without making people travel? Because nobody could go anywhere.
Right.
And they could meet. So so many people figured out ways like Zoom, like we're using now, using these platforms to do it from a distance. And it's so good in a number of ways, because if you're a rare patient and you live in Montana, you're never going to be invited to Chicago too. But if you're in Montana, you can be on a Zoom call, or you could do an interview on your computer. So it really opened up the world to people are more accepting that people could be anywhere. And I think that really helped overcome one of the biggest challenges to talk to people. I guess the other challenge is I think it's trust. You need to trust who's asking you questions or what you're doing. And I mean, if you're going to your personal physician and you trust him or her and they leave, that's terrific. But so many of these are clinical trials, you don't really know. So companies and organizations really have to establish trust, and it doesn't happen overnight, right? You don't make friends in a
Very
minute.
good point.
Yeah, you have it. So we like to do that with our folks. I always say, people can refer other patients to us, and I love it. But don't do it. Wait until you're comfortable. Wait until they've done a study or two and they see that they're treated well and they see they're paid quickly. Because nobody, like pushy salesmen. Do it now. No, I don't trust them. But if they're like, no, do it at your own speed. Wait until you're comfortable and confident. Then at least we found that really helps people gain trust. And that's, you have to do it.
That's key.
Well, and the trust then fosters good responses, I would imagine.
Yes.
More in-depth responses, not a brief summary, but something that maybe is more valuable.
That's right. And more they dig deeper. And some people, after some of the interviews and such, contact, because we don't see it's interesting. We don't see the interviews or see the survey results. We know who has taken part and we pay them, but we don't see their answers. The client don't know the person's name. They have an ID, but they know the answer. So it's a good way to protect it. But sometimes afterwards, people tell us that was very cathartic. Or I told them things I haven't even told my family. Because you'll have an empathetic interviewer that really knows the category, and And people, it's almost like a therapy session. People are able to share what's deep inside them if it's so
Oh,
moves them.
isn't that interesting? Huh.
Yeah.
So, can you discuss the role of patient advocacy groups
Huh.
in your work and how Rare Patient Voices collaborates with these organizations to amplify patient voices?
Yeah, we love patient advocacy groups. We work with them several ways. One is we love to go to their events. You know how they have a walk, a conference, or a fundraiser, and that's where you meet patients in person.
Yes.
And that I didn't realize at the time. I figured, well, how else do you find people but to go to where they are? So it was wonderful. But I found out, coincidentally, if you will, there's a lot of other benefits to that. One, if they see us, they trust us. They get an email. They'll say, "Oh, I met these people." It's not just you don't just get a stray email. You're like, "Who's this? And where did they get my email?" But no, "Oh, I met these people at the MS Walk or at whatever it might be." So it helps gain trust that way. And then our clients love the fact that we've met so many people, because here's a scary thing. Do you know there's a ton of fraud in market research? I mean, I guess any industry where there's money, right? Any industry, there's somebody's going to figure out some kind of a fraud. But there are people that will fake a disease to do a survey. There might not even be people.
Really?
Bots in another country. There are places that have all these computers set up to automatically pretend to be people and answer surveys just to get the money. So it's crazy. So our clients love, it's like, no. We've met folks. You know, we've gone to that and we know it. The other great thing is patients refer other patients.
Yes.
And I call that golden too. People don't refer a fake person. It's somebody in their support group, or if it's a genetic disease, it might be a relative or whatever it might be. So by going to events and back to the advocacy group. So advocacy groups are referral partners to us also. So in addition to having an event, we'll pay an advocacy group $10 for everybody that they refer to us. They can't give us people's names. What they can do is post it on their Facebook page or newsletter, and we give them a unique link. So if somebody signs up on our website, we know who directed
where they came from,
and we pay them for that. And we love that, because we call it a passive fundraiser for these groups, because they can just put the word out, and they're giving a benefit, right, to their members too. If they're not interested, they don't have to do it. But if they do it, they earn $120 per hour of their time. So it's like a double hit. The group gets funding and the people get funding, and it's a win-win, right? It's a win to all.
This is really an all-out effort to get patients to sign up. I didn't realize that. So you've got people that are out at events. This is really quite an involved process in order to ensure truthfulness is what you're after for your client.
And when I first started, it was just me, and I was going around to these events, and actually it was kind of neat, because a walk will be like on a Saturday or Sunday morning. So I'd go to Chicago. My son would go to Chicago. He was like 10 or 12, and he would have a weekend, and we do tourist things. And my daughter I remember she went with me to MS Walk in Albuquerque, and we had the rest of the weekend to do fun things. So we went around, but now we have a whole team of people that work with us. And here's something else I didn't plan on that was terrific. So many of the people, part-time people that started working for us at events, they were they have a disease, or the parents of the kids with a condition.
Right.
He said, "What can I do for you?" And so they would start doing that for us. And then over time, some of them said, "Well, what else can I do?" When you work with somebody, you can see that they're. So now a lot of our staff is from that community. Our full-time project managers.
Oh, isn't
they're
that
from
wonderful?
that? So they know the rare disease community, and then they're dealing with it. So they,
So they truly are empathetic.
Yeah,
really
and we knew that they were a good worker, because you're working somebody part-time, and it's not somebody tricking you into hiring them. It's terrific. Right. So we had a wonderful thing, and I never planned on it. It just kind of happened.
Do you feel like the medical research community really values this connection, this bridge to the patients and the caregivers, back to what we were talking about before?
More and more they do. It's amazing. They all have the phrase patient centricity, right? You've heard that. And they all say we have a commitment to patient centricity, which at first and maybe to some companies it's lip service, but I see more and more over time that they say, wait a minute, we need to talk to patients early on. We need to help. We can't just talk to the experts and set up a clinical trial. We have to talk to the patients. What's important to them, how to make it work for them.
Makes so much sense. It's like Kleenex.
Yes.
I know, it's not so obvious. Because it's, as I say, so funny when I started, people like, well, we talk to the doctors because they prescribe. Well, who are the people that use your products? You got to talk to the people that they'll tell you everything. A doctor might say, oh, my patients don't mind having shots. I tell the patient, I say, I don't tell the doctor this, but I hate getting shots. I wish they would come out with a pill. You have to talk to the people. And
absolutely.
The caregiver, sometimes patients won't say it, but the caregivers will say, well, let me tell you, my wife really hates this. She won't tell you. You really need to get the point of view.
Yeah.
So how do you get diversity and inclusiveness in this project? How do you do that?
And that is so important now, right?
Yeah.
A big question. I mean, back to our basics. We go to where the people are. So we'll go to events. I remember I'll go to a lupus walk in Chicago or an MS walk in Baltimore. So we really get a lot of minorities, people of color. When you go to the events where they are, and the fact that they can earn, for years it was $100 an hour, and with the inflation we raised it to $120 per hour. But that's very important and impactful to people. And because of that, we pay people by check. We don't send a gift card. Gift cards are nice, but these people tell us, I can't pay my rent with a gift card. I can't pay my copay. So we like to appeal to those folks, but going where they are and reaching out to them. The biggest diversity problem we have is gender. Women are much better. More, they join and they're more. We men, we don't like to talk about any of this stuff.
Right.
We'll get so for example, if we have a breast cancer project and a prostate cancer project, women will come out of the woodwork and talk about the breast cancer. Men, it's like pulling teeth to get them to talk about the prostate. So that's our bigger one. We rather that we get, we focus on the diseases and conditions, and we certainly get people of all the demographics, but getting the men is the most difficult.
Wow. Well, just think of our Secretary of Defense. He's back in the hospital again.
Right. And he didn't even want to tell his boss, the president.
No, didn't even want to tell his boss that he had prostate.
I gotta believe.
And I think if it had been another form of cancer, he would have owned up. Right.
It could be, or if it had been a woman, it wouldn't have been prostate. Yes, but I'm sure she would have.
She would have said, but men don't want to admit that they're ill. Right?
Exactly.
They don't want to tell.
Right. So someday hopefully we can overcome that. But
that's
we have so many that do. It's just percentage wise. Men.
I understand that men are not as open, maybe to chatting about it as women. Yeah. Interesting. Can you share some insights into the process of patient recruitment and how Rare Patient Voices identifies and engages with them?
Yeah, I talked a little bit about going to these events. That's so important.
Yes.
The referral partners. But the other thing we do, and we have a wonderful team that's so good at this, social media. I mean, I know about Facebook, but I don't even think of Instagram. But Instagram and TikTok and because people with, as you can imagine, there's all different ages and such, and you really want to appeal to all. And it's really great. They go out and post things and let people know. And it's not just us. We work with the advocacy, back to the advocacy groups. We'll help them post. We'll say, we'll give them materials and things because it's so important. When it comes from them, it again helps with the trust issue because they might already know the advocacy group and they know that we're working together. So all of those things. Now, one of the things it means is we have that team works very closely. We just don't let people just sign up and get in. Back to that fraud issue. We look very closely. What medications are they using? Does that make sense for that? If there's a red flag, if something looks a little weird,
I see.
Pull them up. It's funny just talking to somebody live. I go to doctors. In 2 seconds, they're real, right? Like
yes. So you do validate these people.
And searching online for an answer. It's like, well, they might be real or not, but we can't take the chance. So.
Oh, interesting. So you really have to do a background check.
Yeah, you really have to take your time. And the funny thing is, because again, fortunately, I know this stuff, having done it, and even more fortunately, other folks are doing it now, but on our team. But it's not just the information people, it's a pattern. I remember once people sign up, everything was fine, but I noticed a lot of these emails all had a fruit in them, because you can get
they had a
100
what?
Gmail addresses in a minute, right? So they probably couldn't think of it. They had Joe Peach something and Joe Apple and Mary, I'm like, wait a minute,
For
this
goodness
doesn't have to buy
sake,
ring.
a fruit. Oh, I didn't
Wow.
understand.
So you have to look at the
So the
patterns.
emails were fake. The emails were fake.
So
is
you
what
look
you're
at the
saying.
pattern and say, wait a minute.
Oh,
Wow.
oh my goodness. Boy, I tell you, you have to be on your toes, don't you?
And as you can imagine, when I tell patients this, like, I don't even want to have this condition, and somebody else is pretending to. I mean,
Yes.
Yeah.
you get
Yeah,
irate,
that's really,
right? It's
really infuriating.
can't people use
Really
that
infuriating.
ingenuity for good, right? Instead
Yeah,
of
really,
but,
really. Well, that's the time we live in, I guess.
Well,
Yeah.
Wes, I'd love to go back to talking about how pharmaceutical and biotech companies benefit from partnering with rare disease organizations.
Yeah.
And we were talking about how they're starting to understand they need to talk to the patients more than even the doctors, so that they're more just a little more responsive to the people using the product, as opposed to the doctors prescribing the product. And do patient insights bring value to the research and development efforts? Have they helped to just really target them and make them a little stronger and better?
I think one of the key areas where they do that is clinical trials, right? No drug will get approved and brought to market without passing through the various clinical trials. And companies have learned the hard way that you can't just, go to your scientific researchers and create a clinical trial. Because what's the number one problem with clinical trials? They can't get patients and they take too much time. And to these companies, the clock is ticking on their patent. They need to have it. So it's so important to talk to some patients first. They'll help set up the clinical trial, or they'll learn what will attract people to this. For example, a company might think, hey, people will like to come in more often, but for a shorter visit. But they talk to patients, patients like, no, if I'm taking the day off, I don't care if the visit's long or short, but if I can do it every 6 weeks instead of every 2 weeks. So they can learn what works best from the patient and the patient's family's point of view, and even the measures that they test, that they want to prove that it works, find out from the patient. So more and more of them now, before they even set up a clinical trial, they talk to the patients. They go to the patient advocacy group. They learn what's important to them, and that sets them up for success. It's much better to talk early than, as the group say, then go
makes you wonder what they did before this, and because it makes so much sense. How did they do it without talking to them?
I know, and that's why they found, why are we having trouble with this? We talk to the patients. Yeah, you talk to them after it was set up.
Exactly.
So I see more and more learning that, doing that, and I think it's going to make a big difference. So I'm very happy to.
So the doctors are really not able to provide that sort of insight.
Yeah, and obviously they have to.
The doctors may recommend the trial to the patient, but they can't say if the patient's actually going to sign up, or if the patient, what the patient, their hesitancy is. The doctor can't articulate that the way the patient can.
And they might know some of it, but they won't know.
Right.
Because it's just a different world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what trends or developments do you foresee in the field of rare disease research and patient engagement?
Well, the good news is the biggest trend is more of it. They are focusing more.
Oh, good. Yeah.
I mean, we've seen it just because we've grown over the past 11 years. More and more requests to talk to patients at all stages of it. And back to what I was alluding to earlier, I think it's companies talk about patient centricity, but now they're actually putting their money where their mouth is, right?
Okay.
actually doing it, because we see so much more happening there, so many more engagements and earlier in the process, because that's key. Because once things are already decided, what's the point discussing?
Yeah.
So that's a wonderful trend.
Wonderful. What advice, Wes, would you give to patients or caregivers who are interested in participating in medical research but may be unsure of how to get started?
Well, a simple way, we love to help folks do that. So I invite people to visit our website, rarepatientvoice.com, and we list various studies that we have available, so people can look even before they sign up. Once they sign up, if they have a certain condition, we'll email them. But and that's a nice way for people to ease into it, because they could read 10 emails and decide not to do them. And on the 11th one, they said, okay, I'm going to give it a try. This doesn't sound too bad. I'll start with a 15-minute survey, or I do online surveys. They want to talk. People have their preferences. They can pick and choose what they prefer to do. And I always tell patients, you're the boss. You are if somebody asks the question, like back to politicians, if somebody asks the question, you don't want to answer, you don't have to answer. You're the boss. You can say, I'm not comfortable with that. So you don't have to worry about being put into a position where you're uncomfortable.
How many patients would you say are on your roster?
We have 145,000 patients.
Oh my goodness.
Across
Wow.
1,500 different diseases. And that doesn't include a lot of subtypes of diseases. You know what I mean? So depending on how you define it. And we've done now over 9,000 studies. And one of the things I'm most proud of, we've paid patients over $13 million for taking part. So
unbelievable. So this is a large scale.
It went from me now to 40-some folks, and everybody else doing all the hard work, and me doing the fun things like talking to you two. So.
Congratulations.
So, Wes, is there a message you would like to leave with our listeners today?
Well, yeah, the thing that impresses me when I go to patient events, people must have very difficult conditions, or their children or their parents, and I'm always amazed that they're not. I'm like, wow, if I had this. And then I remember they're not just diagnosed. I'm seeing them after people have like regrouped, and they're coming to these events because they've got a fighting spirit, right? What can I do? Or even if their loved ones passed away, they're still coming. They say, I want to help the others. So I guess my thing is take advantage of that spirit. Even if you're down in the dumps, go to some of these events, work with these groups, see other people that have been through it, and try to turn those feelings, which have got to be terrible when you get a certain diagnosis. Try to turn that into a positive, whether it helps you, it might help others. And one of the ways I invite people is certainly to work with us. Our arms are open to people joining us with any, and not just rare conditions. We allow people with any conditions to join now. So,
Wes, I think that is a wonderful, wonderful message. Just talking about the human spirit and our fellow travelers along the way, how we help each other. What a wonderful way to end our session. I wanted to ask you one other question. So when is Rare Disease Day? And why is this day, why was this day chosen?
Yeah, Rare Disease Day is the rarest day on the calendar. And this year we have the rarest day because it's a leap year. And the rarest day is February 29th, right? It only happens once every 4 years. So Rare Disease Day was chosen for that day. Now, on the other years we have it, but we have to pick like the 28th or something. But this year we're fortunate. It's the 29th. It actually is the rarest day on the calendar. And I'm excited. Every year we go to the, my colleague Pam and I represent Rare Patient Voice. We go to the National Institute of Health in Bethesda. They have a wonderful program, and people come from around the country representing different advocacy groups, and various people come and speak, and we learn about the developments and what NIH is doing to further treatments and support groups and things like that. So let's celebrate this Rare Disease Day, February 29th. And if anybody listening is going to be in Bethesda for that meeting, please, we'll have a table, and we'd love to meet folks there. So please come.
Well, I don't think any of us will now ever forget Rare Disease Day, February 29th.
29th, yeah.
Leap year. It's leap year.
It's a leap year.
Well, thank you so much, Wes, for sharing today all this great insight. And It's wonderful to have you as a guest today. Thank you
Well, it's
so
my
much.
pleasure. It's
Thank
been
you.
wonderful to talk to you. I always love to tell our story and get your perspectives on it. So
And really
hopefully we've been able
pat
to help
yourself on the back. What you have done is really terrific
Well,
and large
with the help
scale.
of a lot of folks, like you,
Yes.
and to help spread the word. So thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of It Happened to Me. We encourage you to learn more at ithappenedtomepod.com. Please use the contact form on our website to submit your guest suggestions, comments, questions, ideas, and feedback for the show. You can also email us directly at ithappenedtomepod@gmail.com. We would really appreciate it if you can leave us a 5-star rating and review on your podcast app like Apple or Spotify. This helps others in the rare disease and medical challenge community find us. It Happened to Me is created and hosted by Kathy Gillenhorn and Beth Glassman. I'm Keira Deneen from DNA Today, and I serve as our executive producer and marketing lead. Amanda Andrioli is our associate producer. Ashlyn Anokian is our graphic designer. And remember, it happened to me. I'm not alone, and neither are you.